So, what we're going to talk about on this session is when we really look at it, why do banks have big, tall, nice buildings? And I think that is an interesting thing for most people. And what we need to do is understand some very basic concepts. But I just talked about hard money lending, and I said the hard money lenders, what do? They borrow money at 10% and sell it out at 14%. And they're making the interest rate spread. Now, where did they learn that from? They learned it from the big banks, because that's what the big banks do every day. And most people miss it because banks don't advertise it that way, but that's exactly what they do. And you're going to see why banks have big, tall, nice buildings, because every city I go to, who has the biggest, tallest, nicest buildings in those cities? It's always the banks. The banks sell something called a CD. So banks sell CDs. CD stands for Certificate of Deposit. And when a bank sells a CD, generally they are going to be less than the inflation rate when it comes to their return. So if inflation is at 3%, the CD will be at 1 or 2%. If inflation is at 6%, a CD will be at 3 or 4%. And it's always going to be that way. Why? Because the banks are going to make money no matter what. They have big, tall, nice buildings because they always make money. So the CDs are always at less than the inflation rate. I'll write that down for us here so we have it. But what also happens with these CDs is a consumer goes out and buys it. So they buy this CD from the bank. The consumer buys the CD from the bank. Well, let's say that the consumer spends $100,000 on this CD. I'm just doing this to make my math easy. And let's say that the CD is at a 3% rate right now. So what does the bank do with this $100,000 that the consumer gave them? They sold them a product and they're paying them a 3% return. What does the bank do with that money? The bank goes out and either invests it or lends it out. So the bank is technically borrowing money at 3% from an investor, from a consumer, if you will. And what does the bank do? They go lend it out. Now, if I asked you a very simple question, I said, okay, the bank lends it out at 6%. The bank borrows it at 3 and then lends it out at 6. What's the bank's ROI? A lot of people will say things like, well, the bank's ROI has to be 50%. Or some people will say 100%. Well, the bank's ROI is neither one of those. The bank's ROI is significantly higher. I'll try to explain this in a very, very simple process. So let's say that you walk into a bank and you give them a $10 bill and they're able to turn that $10 into $20. So you've given them 10 and you walk out with 20, and so now you've doubled your money, okay? But what if you walked in and you didn't give the bank any money and they gave you a $20 bill? How much did you invest? You invested 0. So when we look at it, and so let's say that in this scenario what we get, and we'll keep it really simple, is if we took $10 and we got a $20 return on that, that means we made doubled our money is what it really comes down to. But if we don't invest anything, so if we take $20 and we divide that by 10, that means, and we multiply that times 100, you've gotten a 200% return on your money. You've doubled your money. But now we take $20 and we don't use any of our own money to invest in. And they give us the $20. What did we invest? We invested what? 0. So if you take 20 and you divide that by 0, even Apple can't get that one right. Even Apple can't get that one right. Why can't they get it right? Because it's an infinite return. You can't divide by 0. So why do banks have big, tall, nice buildings? It's a really simple concept. The reason the banks have big, tall, nice buildings is because they get infinite returns. They get an infinite ROI. What do hard money lenders get? Remember earlier when I was talking about hard money, and I said that a lot of people tell me when they have access to capital, they want to be a hard money lender. It's not about using your money. It's about using OPM. Where do we learn the concept of OPM? From the banks. The banks borrow money at a low interest rate, and then they lend it out at a little higher interest rate. So they're using none of their own money. So why do banks have big, tall, nice buildings? It's the same way that you can get big, tall, nice buildings, is to use OPM, is to get infinite returns. Man, if I was standing in front of a group of people right now, I'd say, turn to the person beside you, give them a high five, and say, I want to be the bank. That is our goal at The Path, is to show you how to be the bank. Look forward to seeing you guys on The Path.